Yeah. Anyway, I'm just started recording now because I forgot to, and now I want you to back up and just give that.
Yeah, totally. So, so kind of the cliff notes is the United Planet game Up Game is creating a 2030 immersive reality game show, and the way we do that is we are gathering a core group. We're calling it the Academy. We're using the Burning Man experience as a way to find those people. So they're creating experience. We're creating Burning Man in 2030 in Ibiza during Burning Man week as a way to create this experience. And what we're doing is taking people on a vision quest to meet their 2030 self and to apply collective intelligence to essentially co-envision the most ideal place for the future of society. So we're really focused on the vision piece. It's like storytelling. We want to bring teams of 12 teams of 12, 144 people to Ibiza 16 times a year. There's 16 weeks. Each of those 16 represents a league, which represents one of the SDGs. But as I said, it's not zero hunger, it's food abundance. And it goes around the lunar calendar and follows the medicine wheel. So we've got the earth team, the air team, the fire team, and the water team. And those are like the meta areas of the seasons, essentially. That's our like earth season, air season, fire season, water season. And what we've basically developed is it's getting a pretty sophisticated immersive experience where we're designing this initiation ritual rite of passage where we will bring eagles, they're called, if you play on the team, if you're invited to be a player, a storyteller for the future of humanity and the future of the planet, you're invited to be an eagle and you join a team of 12. You meet your 2030 self through your twice born initiation. So you'll go through a rite of passage, a journey where you will take it very seriously, the person you wish to be in 2030, and you'll actively choose to birth yourself into that person. And then from that place of being in like communitas catharsis ecstasis or community healing and rapture, from that place, we will co-envision where we wish to be by 2030 and the solutions that can get us there. And then each team will essentially come out with an artifact of like, this is our collective vision. And there'll be 12 teams of 12 for each league. And so they become like SWAT teams. Basically, they're organizations that these 12 people come from can, if they wish to, have a fluid workforce of all 144 people. So they become like time traveling chrononauts, we call them, time traveling like Navy SEALs of systems change, where they can be fluid between 12 organizations at the forefront of non-incremental innovation, at the kind of focused on the quantum leaps. And then what happens, this is part one, like vision is part one. Part two is what we want to do is be able to create those visions into an immersive reality game where people can start to experience the world that has been described by these team members. And individuals can start funding those visions. So each league can raise, we're thinking it like a kind of bond, like a decentralized bond, where any funder can go and put capital into the do that is saying, okay, this is our vision, this is like this is the way we remember the future. And then from that place, part three of the game, act three, in the kind of Shakespeare, the kind of 10-year golden decade adventure. Act three is then how do we then use that capital to create those immersive experiences of the world we wish to live in, to make them reality, to essentially design for teams to be able to get paid to join, join the leagues, to be able to actually go and execute on the vision. And so see this as it's really a an ecosystem around storytelling, because I still think, we've discussed this a lot. I still think the narrative is the thing that's most holding us back, because most people don't realize that there's actually a team of people working to go beyond nation states, or go beyond fiat currencies, or go beyond, traditional legal structures, etc. And so we've got a kind of crisis of imagination. And so what we wish to do is not just have one person tell that story, but have a whole journey of teams around different pillars of civilization, hook their hook their kind of hook up their wagons to the same narrative, so that we actually have a critical mass of people talking about the world in the same way in 2030 and stepping into 2030 characters. So this then creates all our pop-ups, where we're going to have a pop-up at the UN, where we'll take people into the UN General Assembly, where we'll take people through to meet their 2030 selves and share some of the narratives. We'll do it. We're doing it at COP26, and we'll create these like 2030, basically like super inspiring kind of like TED Talks from the future, where we can showcase the vision that's coming and say like, this, do not expect the vision for the future of humanity to come from nation states. It's like they're going to still think of it through a lens of the way we currently do it. And so that's where the United Planet is kind of liberating us of our sacred cows and saying like, this is all about identifying the like, it's like if IDEO was to redesign the world, like how would we do it? Okay, we do this kind of design thinking approach, where we would start to envision and start to understand and start and bring those at the forefront that are already there, to say like, if you could design this with an open canvas, what would it look like? And so the idea then is, to be able to make the right choice, we actually have to have choices. And so the idea is of the vision quests, is that we're essentially expanding the number of choices we have for us to make the right choice of which kind of future we wish to kind of declare rather than predict. So it's like, it's creating kind of united plan, united planet. It's creating a united plan of where we wish to aim.
A regenerative alternative to the United Nations, well, it's transparent, decentralized regenerative alternative.
Exactly, and uses this like gold, like super weapon of hope and love, and that's 2030. Because whilst there's a mess in 2021 of nobody's got their shit together, there's nations are failing, nations are struggling to cope with the situation. They're not designed for it. Whilst that's going on, to try to actually create a like an alternate narrative is like, there's so much noise, we can see it right in our communities. There's so much noise going on. Whereas what we found is, when we time travel into 2030 and we create that experience for people there, everybody automatically assumes that in 2030 we're all collaborating, we're all co-creating, we're at that point of we've kind of got through the inertia of the present moment. And so it gives us an ability, by creating a game set in 2030, it gives us the ability to actually design the cooperative ecosystems that we wish for in the present world. But we can design them from 2030 and then have them apply themselves in 2021 and the years ahead. So it's creating kind of talent, like hyper focused talent communities of people that have the capacity and the resources to go and execute on the most ambitious kind of non-incremental innovations.
All right, there's about 13 different ways I could take this. One, a quick response. I mean, super pragmatic to do the visioning process from 2030. I mean, every organization starts off with, what's the vision? Like, why do you even exist? What are you moving towards? So I think starting from that end goal of where we're trying to get and working backwards.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love it.
with seeds, right? Like we're gonna take we're gonna take pi, and we're gonna like reverse engineer until like we've basically redesigned like a more efficient currency, like a exchange of value. You know, it's like you're very much a kind of case in point with how reverse engineering from the place that is sufficiently ambitious to meet the needs of meet the needs of the current um, problem essentially. Um, but we're doing it over 16 pillars. So we're not the ones to execute on the solutions. We're the ones to bring together the community, kind of brotherhood, sisterhood necessary to go execute on it.
Um, love it. So I'm applying this from the seeds perspective, a new economic and financial system. I'm just thinking in my mind, okay, how do we do the financial side of this? How do we fundraise? How do we, yeah, anyway. So from that lens, um, there's these things called regions within seeds, which is 144. Go figure. Citizens can come together and form a region, and then that region can earn part of a harvest, and then fun stuff. Regions could be topic regions. Second.
I need it. So 144 is 144 people is a region.
Yeah, 144. If they all say they're part of the same region, that region becomes active and then is eligible to start earning a harvest, so that those members could then start funding things that they decide. So that's the end goal of like, how do we get sustainable funding for these groups? Could be through seeds. But either way, step one is, this group could form, the 12 can come together, 144, whatever that minimal viable group is, that pillar, or forgot the other name that you used.
The league.
There you go. Boom. So every league can come together and ask for an alliance share in seeds. Now these are deferred seeds, so that it's not the seeds that they have right away. It's just an escrow with their name on it. But then what they can do with these seeds is this is an asset that they can use to fundraise with. And HIFA would be, this is the process that HIFA is doing to incubate organizations right now. And we've been funding a couple organizations getting set up. We'd be interested in funding these, I'm sure. So an organization forms around a topic, ending food. That's awesome. David Solomon's already part of this. We already have a whole group around it who would be willing and eager to join that league as well. So we can form a super league around that, regenerative food for everyone. It gets an alliance share in seeds, maybe, let's say 1 million seeds worth. That's a projected value of $1 million at go live. So maybe a year from now. So using that then base asset, you can go and raise funds. So HIFA would even be willing to invest based on those assets. And then you can go and raise funds from elsewhere as well. And then that creates, all of these could be dues in themselves, which I think are a fantastic tool to be using to centralize organizations. You already did all of that. And then the end goal is after go live, each one of these dues become their own topic region, and they start earning a harvest to continue funding their stuff. So this is how we can create a sustainable funding source through seeds without any other external funding required. However, if we do get external funding in addition, awesome. It's just extra power that we can continue doing incredible stuff with. But this model would be that it's not required to be able to say.
Exactly. So because what I had in mind, and it was we had a conversation back in I think it was like sort of November timeframe, where we discussed just a kind of what if scenario. We discussed like if every game an eagle was to get 111 seeds, that would be each game, each person in the league each team would get 133,333,000 seeds, and that what that would do then is create essentially it would seed each league with an initial value exchange that they could then go out and say we as a team and we as a league are going to raise more money, and the value that the capital in a league is essentially the aggregate of all of the teams, like all of the 12 teams go and say, okay, we're going to raise this much money for this, the league itself is an aggregate of all of that capital that all of those teams make, and then the teams can go and choose. Well, hey, it's no point all of us having a, I don't know, just for simplicity, a bookkeeper. Why don't we collectively, as 12 teams, pay for the same bookkeeper for the same service? You know,
Yeah.
so that you actually have a fluid workforce out of these. You know, just as a random example, there's going to be 1,000 different examples of where you can co-fund a kind of a talent co-fund, an asset co-fund, resources co-fund, research co-fund, whatever it might be, at the league level. And so where the way we're seeing it is that seeds, you know, I've always had in mind, because I think we're getting the same, we're sourcing from the same well.
Yeah.
And so I've always had in mind that the way I've been thinking about it is there's two currencies in the in 2030: seeds and stars. Stars is a different function to seeds. They're an entirely gifted. You can only be gifted stars, and you can only. It's like a. I can't wait to talk to you about stars. I think I've done it a little bit, but I've been kind of cooking up this one for several years from Vipassana and other things. But it's intentionally designed to um, essentially displace the US dollar and kind of other fiat currencies in doing it, which is potentially a bit of a sidetrack. So we can kind of table this, but
I
um,
mean, I'd love to hear it because we just launched this thing called Gratitude, which sounds like it might be similar, but I'd love to hear what stars is, and let's weave them together. So,
so the simple thing we did was we announced stars last year and said we're not going to be building this yet. This is not the immediate priority. However, what we did do is say that on April 22nd, 2020, Earth Day, 50 years of Earth Day, we pegged $1 equals one star. But we said as the US government prints more money and the supply of dollars increases, 36 out of every $100 has been printed in the last 12 months. So since we announced this peg, as the supply of dollars increases, the cost of the swap, it's like an in-game swap from your dollar into stars, is going to get more expensive. And then part of what we want to do is every citizen of the United Planet, every time the US government prints a dollar, the vast majority of those dollars go to the 1%. What we're going to do is every time the US government prints a dollar, we're going to mint a proportionate, in terms of supply, a proportionate star, but we're going to give it equally to every single member of the ecosystem. It's a gifted in-game currency, but it's essentially doing a jujitsu move on the dollar, because it's saying the weaknesses and the inefficiencies of the US dollar and the injustice of the US dollar. We're just going to mirror the opposite. So we're going to say, like, whatever they do, we will do, but we will, but we will do it like we will mirror but do the way it should be designed, And think of it as it's like a gift currency,
mm,
but it's only able to be used in 2030. So it can never be exchanged back out, which is a really interesting way. So there's some aspects of that I've been thinking about, of like, how do you essentially create an immersive world where people can use stars as a store of value to essentially back. I just wrote this piece yesterday. It's called "From Billionaires to Billions of Heirs," and it's basically a whole piece around how it's written from the perspective of 2030, which I've been doing a lot of writing from 2030 about what happened. And it's the perspective of billionaires saying, like, in 2030, we don't have anyone that just has a bank balance of billions of dollars. It's like, it became like unthinkable that you wouldn't be impacting the lives of a billion people. And here's the way we did it is you can then we'll go to the billionaires to go and say you can fund those leagues. You can essentially be the you can create a essentially it's like a decentralized planetary bank. You can fund those leagues, and that capital is essentially getting utilized for teams to go and transform the world. So and it doesn't need to be philanthropy either. It can be you can get a return on your investment in a league because it's like, those can all be designed by the teams. Like each team can go and say, okay, we need this much capital. We either need it philanthropically or we can provide a return on it, because we want to show that creating value for the commons is, you can create value in doing so. It's not just it doesn't all need to be charity. It doesn't need to be like that. But that's basically the way we've kind of been designing this. But what we see is that seed serves a particular purpose, but stars serve a particular purpose in the game that can be kind of a reward function for your participation. But seeds can be an actual like functional currency that people get paid in and can be exchangeable, etc. When teams come together, that they can earn seeds for their participation. For every, we could design things like for every seed you earn, one seed goes into the fund that goes and funds the changes you propose from the game. And so there's a lot of things I've been thinking about that there.
Ooh. Yeah, so that's a whole other rabbit hole we can dive down as we start rethinking how we coordinate and build value exchange tools. So stars or gratitude, which we can get into gratitude another time. I love the stars concept, especially with the idea of a currency that can't be used until we're in this new system. So one that comes active once we hit 2030, that's kind of a nice.
Exactly. It can be used in the immersive experiences of that. So you can go and use it. It's like you can buy your body armor and whatever in game currencies, but it's like that, but it's a 2030 environment. So you can use it when you go to 2030 experiences. You can go and create 2030 experiences for people to come use their stars. And so it's like,
Oh, I see. Right. So, and all of the events that are happening in Ibiza too on the ground, stars is the
exactly.
currency. Got it.
Exactly, and it just creates it creates a parallel reality where we can show how inefficient, like we can demonstrate without having to have mass adoption, how a decentralized, intelligent exchange of value could change everything. So it's kind of, think of it as like a showcase of what's possible if we were to redesign, if we would redesign the exchange of value.
So when's the first one happening in Ibiza?
Well, we've been doing them every 3 weeks with a team of 12 as a prototype. So we've been doing them since November.
Oh, nice.
And we've done like, we've gone round the wheel of 16. So we're kind of like, about a third of the way through right now. And kind of approaching halfway through. But what we now want to do is start, like, that's been for people on the island to showcase like local projects. And what I've really been doing is using that as a way to find who can be the academy members that are leaders of like either regenerative storytellers, like healers, practitioners, people that can create experiences, so that when we bring others here, we can create this really experience. Now, what I'm seeing is that we could do Burning Man Week here, which will be the last week of August, first week of September. We can do a 2030 like festival, kind of like regional burn set in 2030, and like I've got lots of contacts with Burning Man. Like Mariam's a good friend and stuff. So I think showing like how a regional could kind of take the initiative, and Burning Man really needs good stories of like how regionals are popping up and being creative and like addressing societal problems in their community. And this would be a really good one here in Ibiza. And so that's what we're seeing that week, and that could be an area where we could give everybody, we could design an experience with seeds and Haifa around that. But then what we're seeing is we want to kick it off with food abundance, which is from the end of September, from the Harvest Festival. And that's where we would bring the first team. And we're still not sure if we would bring the full 144, or whether we'd start with a smaller group of teams. Like we already have enough venues to house people, so we could go up to 144. But there's a lot to organize to pull something like that off, because once we've created it, we want it to roll, and like every 3 weeks there'll be another cohort of people coming together to be part of this like time traveling adventure.
So really, I see this as another portal of a new paradigm where you're bringing people in, you're giving them the tools and resources they need to go and set up the structures and go back and take it to wherever else they are and coordinate together, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly.
Um,
And then once they've come in, they've like they've got this unforgettable foundation where they've got a really good sense of themselves in 2030, like their personal mission, their dharma, and they've got a sense of like, this is what we came together to envision in 2030 for these organizations. And so that's where we can bring, purpose-led organizations that are at the forefront of systems change around each league. We can invite them to come and bring a team, and what we're aiming at is positioning this in such a way that if you're invited on a vision quest to into 2030, if you as an organization are like shortlisted to bring a team, like it's one of the most like it's a great honor. It's a privilege to be invited to come and vision quest on behalf of the planet and future generations. So we're kind of positioning it in a way that where we can see that we should be able to invite really anyone, and then want to come, like that be a career highlight, if you like, for them to be able to do that, and then create a Netflix a film series where we would showcase the stories that these teams are envisioning for 2030, and some of the experiences that they have, that could be like a 16-part like docu-series on showcasing time travel, essentially people coming in and sharing what kind of future we can have.
yes, I'm in love. There's a couple of ways I think we could weave in, just a couple other trigger points is something that I loved, as you mentioned, people being able to come here, do their vision quest, tap into what, who and what they are in 2030 and how they serve the transition, the Renaissance, right? I feel like that element is actually deeply lacking in Seeds in Haifa. As people are showing up, they love it, they're tapped into the vision, but they're not entirely sure how they show up. They don't necessarily know what their role is. So I feel like this is a really functional and foundational place to be able to invite people to experience that and to tap into what that is. Something we're calling this is like archetypes, or an archetypal contribution. Like, what is that? So Haifa is actually moving into this now. Like before, we had infinity roles where people show up, you imagine what your role is, and then you play it. But we've actually broken that down now into 5 different archetypal contributions. So as people show up, they pick like, okay, I'm doing those 2 types of contributions, and it really helps ease the process for people to say like, this is how I'm showing up here. So I see that being incredibly valuable for you to maybe help us reverse engineer what are those archetypal contributions, like what are people coming out of here, So then they go through and they're like, okay, this is how I'm showing up. Then you step into the do or your organization with that understanding. And then people already know the role they need to play. And that's so functional to getting these self-organized organizations up and going is once people actually know the part they have to play in it, it becomes infinitely easier than when people are used to being told what to do and how to do it and used to like a hierarchy and boss and all that stuff. So I think that would be fantastic is if we can come up with a short list or whatever you have of these different archetypal or archetypes that you're seeing, and then we can build those into the do environments so that goes up, they get their due, they have the different archetypal roles, they know which ones they're applying for, they step into them, then they start contributing, building and growing and doing. So that's really what I would see as the pragmatic outcome here is how can we best get that group of people to come together, know their role, know how they show up, start earning value doing it, and for it to be sustainable financially enough for them to exit their old job or their old work or whatever else they were doing and be able to weave it fully into this. If they're already doing something of purpose and value that they loved in their life, great, they can weave onto that too. And maybe you take a 20% role or 50% of whatever they can do. But for the majority of people out there that aren't doing what their passion, purpose, or their 2030, dharma is, we need to create those foundations where they can fully step into it. So that's how, Haifa and Seeds are approaching this. How do we make that super pragmatic so people can step in? But what we've missed so far is like, yeah, we're providing that foundation, but people don't necessarily know how to show up. So that's what I'm hearing here is that the role that you get to plug into this is like how they get to show up. And then those people.
Exactly. And that could be quite literally if we think about the way you created Seeds and Haifa as you created the vision of like what's the big solution and then you essentially reverse engineered and you're still in that like you're 10% on your journey, I might put it. And so we could do the people equivalent of that, where when they come through the do, we could initiate them as like, okay, look, let us support you in your 2030 vision, so that you're starting with that. And what I find for team collaboration, when each of us knows from a storytelling perspective, like we remember stories, when each of us hears what Reiki's 2030, who you are in 2030, I remember. And so I remember what is your what is your dharma? I remember it really easily when you take me into a 2030 environment and you kind of say what was yours to do. I then know whenever I see that thing to send it over to Reiki. And so it creates a really powerful, sticky kind of team dynamic where by starting with the story of each team contributor, we can create that kind of that connective tissue and that camaraderie of like deep community that can be that can then be wielded in any direction for around shared purpose.
Totally.
So
Then I could even see the profile in your do is your 2030 self. So as you show up and like you're playing this game in your archetype from your 2030 self, and that's what we are. We're living in it now, and that's how we bring it here. Like I think we're going to get to 2030 a hell of a lot sooner than 9 years in my world.
Exactly. You've got the point. So 2030 actually isn't in the linear clock time. It's a notion. It's more important than a date. It's actually a concept.
Well, it's just hijacking the mind. It's letting us imagine something that's far enough out that's still attainable, bringing it here, and then yeah, I get it.
Exactly. You get what we've been up to with this, and it's like not everybody does, which is amazing. I'm like I think a lot of people think this is kind of make believe or play, which it is, but it's also highly fucking effective.
Very pragmatic play, Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But this I mean, going back to your earlier question of like how you're like what you need of kind of like strategic, like the meta strategists and the vision people that are able to take kind of lightning to earth, like take a vision and say like how do we actually pragmatically design this into the Seeds and Haifa ecosystem. And that like this whole piece is very much like where I would love to play with you is like how can we design for the experience of co-creation in the Haifa do and like in the Seeds ecosystem to be playful, to be gamified, to to be kind of integrated into a meta story that each of us have characters and like archetypes in. Um, and in doing so, we're able to better understand each other's gifts and contributions so that we can be, to do what the Navy SEALs call the switch. It's like so we can act as a single organism.
Sure. Yeah, and definitely start bringing them out and promoting them within each other, seeing each other as our change self. Like
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's ancient technology. This is what the rites of passage was all about. And indigenous cultures are doing this for millennia, and they were doing
Exactly.
it because it was really potent technology. So let's bring it back in. Um, yeah, I'm definitely for this. Maybe we can close this up with what's the biggest need or request or way that I can support you right now.
Well, what I would like to do is, I mean, it's getting to the point where we've got enough of a kind of okay, what the last 6 months have just been like a ton of prototyping. Like, what is it? And I wanted to strip away anything that wasn't kind of taking us closer to the like how do we design this immersive experience. And so I always knew like I got to know you and continue to get the information from David about what's going on. I was like, I'm already sold on the kind of seeds marriage being like the ecosystem of like how we can do this, and I just felt we needed to continue building these, making progress into like getting to prime time, getting it to getting the engines ready. I was like, Radke's got this and the team's got, so it feels like a very good time to circle back now and say, okay, as based on where Haifa is now, how could we bring um, some of the up game magic into the Haifa experience and even into profiles where we could like integrate, and vice versa? How then could the up game create a do for each league so that we're actually already like creating that kind of foundation of like collaborative technologies for and capacity for each league to raise capital.
Sure. Um, yeah, there's a couple layers here. I'm just going to call it hardware, software. The hardware of being able to create dues and all of that infrastructure you're talking about is we're already on the way to do that. So that's not a problem. The most interesting spot is the software. So when I was mentioning the archetypes, like the roles, because this is what ultimately every do is going to have to do anyway, is how do they want to coordinate? How do they want to interact with that do? So what I would love to see from your guys' side is what do those archetypes look like? How are each one of these dues organized? Like where are the value flows? How are people showing up? What is a contribution? How are contributions seen and recorded? If you have a clear picture of any of that, I would love to see it. If not, you can also just default to what the do would provide you. But if there is an alternative that you see in mind with any of those, that would be helpful, because then we could start, one, make sure that the do could even offer that if it's something crazy, um, or two, just have you guys start thinking about it. Again, like a big piece is like those archetypes. Before we had roles, again, that was like an infinite number. People could show up and design their own structure, and that got chaotic. So we broke it down and said, no, there's 5 different structures of how you can show up and play in Haifa. That would be something that would be, phenomenal for these do structures to do. Like, what are the 5 different ways that people can show up inside an updo? What does that look like? So then when people come and play this game, they just pick one of those characters. The same way with any, multi-massive player online role-playing game. You show up, you have your team you pick, great. That's like one of the 16 leagues that you have. Then you go into your team and then you're like, okay, well, I'm part of that team. What character am I? And that's your next thing. So that's what we'd like to design, is design the teams. What do they look like? Design the characters. What do they look like? What skills do the characters have? There's another tool that we have in the do, which is called badges, and badges give special abilities and mean special things. For example, Haifa has this like a mediator badge. You take the mediator badge if you're going to be the one dealing with mediation, and that gives you a bonus and pay. Or a lamplighter, which means that you're carrying information up and down the organization. Or a facilitator, which means you're holding space on calls, etc. So if you have any of these special badges that you see existing within a do environment as well, what are they? So that's what I would want, is like, what are the different artifacts that exist in an updo environment? Let's design those so that when we do launch this, they come complete with all of those tools.
Yeah.
It's a lot nicer doing this in advance rather than being like, okay, the do's ready, then you step into it and it's like, oh no, we got to design all these artifacts now, and then it pushes back launch another 2 months, you know. So if we have all of this designed, then we build the do, and then it's flowing.
Yeah, yeah. I love this. And I think getting like I'd love to have a sense when you described like what you're looking for at the kind of like the meta strategy level across Hypha and Seeds. Um, because this archetypes piece I can think it through from the perspective of like how we've designed the game, and that could be utilized for like as like a role play for all of the do's. But I also think um, there's a lot here for you and I to uh, basically articulate how Haifa, it's the conversations we had last year. It's like Haifa and United Planet being kind of like, you guys being kind of foundational, cooperative, reward and, and like communication technologies, and then the game being like building scenarios from that. I think that's where like we're not talking kind of abstractly anymore. We're kind of we've got a structure that we want to kind of road test, and that's what I felt we really needed, to get to. We need to get beyond the point of like ironing out the kinks and creating, doing the prototypes of teams of 12 for Haifa, because otherwise I felt like trying to integrate Seeds and doing those teams on Haifa was a bit like putting a kind of V8 engine in a go-kart. We were just like, there was too much infrastructure for the size of the collaborations we were prototyping with. Whereas now, once you start getting into 144 person, like, it's, you call them regions, we're thinking them as like legions.
Oh, cool.
But it's like,
I got allegiance. I like that.
it's a good one, right? It's like like the 12 teams of 12 becoming a legion. But what are you in a league? You're a legion in a league. Um, um, but because then we could have leagues, you could have legions. You could have one league across the world and legions in tons of regions,
Sure.
that kind of thing. So these are the kind of archetypes. It's like, my role as an individual, my role as a team member. I'm an eagle in a team. I'm then in a league, and so you've got these different. So we can look at the different concentric circles of like me and I, me and us, me and then the team ecosystem. We can look at like how those different interactions operate at each stage.
Um, Fully in love with that. I'm going to share something with you real quick. Unfortunately, I do have to go. I have a call in 2 minutes.
No
Uh,
problem.
I shared with you, it's called the Haifa Handbook.
Oh,
Um,
great.
I feel like this will give you a whole lot of context of what I'm talking about. And if you don't already have something like this, I feel like feel free to open source, grab this, take it, reconstruct it, and build something like this for United Planet and the members showing up. So basically, as a member shows up, they have a handbook. As an eagle shows up, they join this, and this tells them, how to play the game. So we've done this for Haifa. I think it would be fantastic to do it for up. And then the pieces that are part of the do are already scattered throughout here. So it gives you a context of,
I
you know,
love this.
how
I
to.
love this. Thank you for this.
So I'll give you just a quick, you know, rundown. So for example, we have these complexity and responsibility bands, bands 1 through 7. This is not fixed. You know, you could have 3 bands, maybe you have 1 band, maybe you have one type of pay. But this is how we determine pay throughout HIFA. Like the more complex of a role you're showing up in, the more compensation you get. And then we talk about what each one of these bands actually means. Crap, I could
You
be a
gotta go.
play for this.
Let, let, let me what I'd love to propose. Let me read this document
Yeah,
and come back with some specific ideas of like next steps of what we can do because I think this was a good like reconnection and catch up on like what we've both been cooking. And let's from here kind of get into the pragmatic because I love the energy, the ethos, uh, the vision that around everything around do and seeds. I think it's very much like we're cut from the same cloth, and so I think next steps is saying, okay, how do how can how can what we've done with the game be like a scenario from which we can prototype do's and seeds being a reward mechanism?
definitely. I mean, I see it being another arm on our meta body that is the new civilization we're building. I mean,
Yeah,
all seeds and
yeah,
hype is, it's just like a nervous and blood system. And, up is like the right arm of how we actually engage with the world or something like that. It's just, these are
exactly.
different parts, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
It's like almost like I would say like up is like the voice piece of us speaking into reality what we're going to be, and so it's like we're putting together this body, and it's the the whole point is we're all human. We're all like
The voice
we're
piece and the third eye, like seeds and Haifa give the tools to create new realities. But what are those new realities? Haifa and
exactly
seeds can be used to create dystopia just as much as utopia. So it really
exactly
depends on what's our vision. So that vision piece is what I feel like you're really honing in on here. Is what does
yeah.
2030 look like? Shoot. Okay, I do have to go, brother. This is
Yeah.
fantastic.
So good to
Head
see
over,
you.
schedule another time, and let's just make sure we keep flowing.
Yeah, perfect. I'll do that. I've got your Zoom link. I've got it on WhatsApp, I think.
Cool. Epic,
For
brother.
your
Talk
yeah.
soon.
Love, great to see you. Keep great work.
No, you too, brother.
Really
I'll be
good to see.
AMDs are here soon enough.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Come let it. We've got a room here waiting for you. So let us know when you
Taking you up on that,
when.
even if it's in August, September when you're running all this stuff. But
I think you should come here for the burn.
I'm gonna go talk to Susie about it literally right now.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
I think it's gonna be so good. Ibiza Burning Man is gonna be like yeah.
I'm,
So
you don't have to call me, brother.
yeah. All right. Much
Good.
love. Much
Talk
love.
soon.
Take care. Yeah. Bye bye.